So let's look at some examples in 6.2. So in this section, we're factoring trinomials that are in this format. We have an understood 1 coefficient of x squared, then we have an x term, and then a constant. So if you watch the lecture video, they're going to factor this way. The first two terms, or the first term in each parenthesis, multiplies to make x squared. So x squared is x times x. The last terms multiply to make 35. And then the outer and inner terms combine to make the 12x. So we have to ask ourselves, what things multiply to make 35 and add to make 12? So 35 is 1 times 35, or 5 times 7. Well, 5 times 7 is 35. 5 plus 7 is 12. So we're going to use plus 5 and plus 7. Now we can check by foiling that out, by distributing that. So x times x is indeed x squared. X times 7 is 7x. Then distribute the 5. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 7 is 35. So we have our x squared, we have our 35, and if we look at these, which come from the outer product and the inner product, x times 7 and 5 times x, those do combine to make the 12x that we need. So that is the correct way to factor it. So we just have to make sure that our first make the first term, our last to make the last term, and then our inner product and our outer product combine to make the middle one. Okay, so here, write our parentheses. X squared is x times x. 81, what numbers multiply to make 81 and add to make 18? Well, the most common, or probably the product that makes 81 that we're most familiar with, is 9 times 9. And notice 9 plus 9 is 18. We just have to be careful with our signs. How are we going to get a positive 81 but a negative 18 in the middle? Well, what if we did negative 9 and negative 9? Negative 9 times negative 9 is positive 81. Negative 9 plus negative 9. Notice when we did positive 9 plus positive 9, we got positive 18, which is not actually what we needed in the middle. We need negative 18. So if we do negative 9 and negative 9, that product is positive 81. Negative plus a negative, those signs are the same, so we add the numbers, take the sign to the bigger. So that does make negative 18. So we need a negative 9 and a negative 9. Just checking real quickly, yes, negative 9 times negative 9 is 81. Our inner product and our outer product, that does combine to make negative 18x. So those are the correct values there. Kind of the key, and hopefully they told you this in the video, was that if that sign is positive, we either need 2 positives or 2 negatives. So we look at the middle term to make the choice. Positive times positive is positive, negative times negative is positive, so which one do we use? If that middle one is negative, then we have to pick the 2 negatives. And that's what we have, 2 negatives. Okay, so here we actually have 2 different letters. We have X's and Y's. But this is going to work the same way. To get x squared, we need x times x to get 8y squared, well, to get y squared, we would need y times y. And then we have to ask ourselves, what times what makes 8, but also adds to make 6? 8 times 1 is 8, but 8 plus 1 is not 6. 2 times 4 makes 8. 2 plus 4, that is 6. So that's the combination we need. Those numbers multiply to make the 8 on the end. They add to make 6 for the middle. Our signs need to be plus, plus. This time, that one, remember, tells us our signs need to be the same. And the one in the middle tells us we need the 2 positives. So we need a 2 and a 4, and it doesn't matter which order we put them in. Notice that product, the inner product, 2y times x is just 2yx, or we could call it 2xy. And the outer product, x times 4y, we could just call that 4xy. 2xy plus 4xy is 6xy, which is what we needed in the middle. So this is the correct factorization. Now this one is a little bit different because we have a coefficient in front of the x squared term. One thing we have not mentioned yet is that we always look for the greatest common factor first. If we're ever doing factoring, we start with the simplest. Well, the previous problems did not have a common factor, but this one does have a common factor. Each term has a 5 in it. So real quickly, let's pull a 5 into the front. So the first term is 5 times x squared. The next term is 5 times 5x, and the last term is 5 times 6. So how is that inner parenthesis going to factor? So the first need to be x times x to get x squared. The last need to make a positive 6, and the middle needs to make a positive. So we need plus, plus. And then what numbers multiply to make 6 and add to make 5? Well, 1 plus 6 is 7, but 2 plus 3 is 5. So we need a 2 here and a 3 there. Notice our inner product and our outer product make 5x. And that's what we need in the middle. So our answer is those parentheses and then bring down our 5. 5 is the common factor, so bring down our common factor. Now the next one is a little bit different, and while it looks the same, the thing that makes it different is that that sign is negative. Well, how does that affect us? We still need the first to make x squared, so x times x. But this time we need the last to make a negative. Well, how do you multiply two numbers together and get a negative? How do you multiply something times something and your answer be negative? Well, that's if one's positive and one's negative. So we need a plus and a minus. So we need numbers that multiply to make negative 12, and our coefficient in the middle is negative 1. So to get negative 12, we could have negative 1 times 12, negative 2 times 6, negative 3 times 4, negative 4 times 3, negative 6 times 2, or negative 12 times 1. Notice all those multiply to make negative 12. The question is, which of these, when we add them together, make a negative 1? Well, negative 1 plus 12 is 11. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. Negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. So that's the one we need. That's the one that multiplies together to make negative 12, but adds to make negative 1. And you might say adds to make -1. Remember, if we're adding or subtracting, if the signs don't match, we subtract the digits, take the sign of the bigger. So in a way, we're looking for numbers that multiply to make 12 and have a difference of 1. So the 4 needs to be negative, the 3 needs to be positive. So our inner product is 3x. Our outer product is -4x. Since we have different signs, we subtract instead of add. So subtract, we have a difference of 1, take the sign of the bigger. So sometimes we look at this as, since that sign is negative, which signs multiply to make 12 and have, instead of a sum, have a difference of 1. So 3 times 4 make 12. 3 and 4 have a difference of 1. That middle term needs to be negative, so our bigger number has to be negative. So the 4 is the -1. Okay, here again we have a common factor out front, so we can take out our common factor. The first term is 4 times x squared. 28 is 4 times 7, and then we have an x. And if you don't know this off the top of your head, what times 4 makes 72? Well, the easy way to do that is do 72 divided by 4. So 4 times 18 makes 72. Remember, multiplying and dividing are just inverses of each other. If you're not sure what I did, I said 4 times what makes 72. So to get the number we need, divide out the 4, so the number we need is 72 over 4, or 18. So now in parentheses, x squared is x times x, and then since the last is negative, we need a positive times negative. Since we have different signs, when we combine those factors, different signs subtract to make 7. So what numbers multiply to make 18 and have a difference of 7? Well, that would be 9 and 2. 9 times 2 is 18. 9 minus 2 is 7. So if we need a positive 7 in the middle, which one of those needs to be positive, which one needs to be negative? Well, if our answer is positive, our bigger number needs to be the positive one. Notice 9 times -2 is -18. That's what we need there. 9 minus 2 is positive 7. That's what we need there. So we need a positive 9 and a -2. Again, positive times positive is positive. When we do our outer, negative times positive is negative. Since we have different signs, we subtract, take the sign of the bigger. So yeah, that gives us the positive 7x we need. And then again, to get x squared, that's x times x. To get a negative here, we need a positive times a negative, and we need 8 and 2. So 1 times 8, or 2 times 4. Since we have different signs, we're going to be subtracting the outer and inner. So what numbers subtract to make 2? 4 and 2. And which one needs to be positive, which one needs to be negative? If our middle term is negative, we need more negatives than positives. So our bigger number needs to be negative. So let's check that. If we do our inner product and our outer product, notice they have different signs because of the plus and the minus. Different signs, we do what? We subtract the digits and we take the sign of the bigger. So 2 and 4 have a difference of 2, and to make the middle number 2 or negative, we pick our bigger number to be negative. Okay, I think this is the last one. Yep. We mentioned in the last section that we don't like our leading term to be negative. So if our leading term is negative, we can factor out a negative. The only number they all have in common is just an understood 1. So remember when we did adding and subtracting polynomials, if we had a negative in front of a parenthesis, that negative just had the effect of changing all of the signs. So if we factor out a negative, it's going to change each of those signs. We're going to have a positive x squared, a negative 14x, and a positive 33. Notice if we were to distribute that negative 1, it would change that x squared back to a negative, the 14 back to a positive, and a 33 back to a negative. So now that our leading term on the inside is positive, now we factor. X squared is x times x. Since that's positive, we either need plus plus or minus minus. And the middle term tells us we need minus minus. And then we look for what numbers multiply to make 33. Multiply to make 33. And since the signs are the same, we need them to add to make 14. Well, 33 is either 1 times 33 or 3 times 11. So that doesn't add to make 14, so we must need 3 and 11. So we need a minus 3 and a minus 11. We can check. That's minus 3x. That's minus 11x. The signs are the same, so we add the digits. Sign of the bigger, so negative 14x is what our middle term needs to be. Only thing left to do is to bring down our negative 1, and that's our answer.